I'm what you call a black sheep, always have been, I know. You can't control a black sheep, this is how we roll. I'm what you call a black sheep, always have been, I know. You can't control a black sheep, this is how we roll. I'm what you call a black sheep, always have been, I know. You can't control a black sheep, this is how we roll.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing today? And how, more importantly, did your July the 4th go? I'm wearing my hat today. I think it's actually my husband's hat. He's not wearing it, but I got the little flag patch on here. It looks like lopsided. I don't know. Anyways, it is Sunday today, and we are going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, my Jesus. And right off the bat, I will apologize if you get offended. If you're seriously religious, you might get offended because we're going to look at Jesus in a few ways. Of course, many people take everything in the Bible about Jesus literal, as there's 3 different veins you can do. And we are not going to take it literal. We're not going to be viewing Jesus and the Bible as literal driven interpretation. We're going to be looking at other interpretations as we go on. So we'll do the same. We'll do a little bit. We'll introduce concepts of Jesus, and you're probably going to figure out why I'm a little bit suspicious about all this, yeehaw, bringing back the church kind of thing. Jonocide says, I'm pagan, so go for it. Oh, great. Anyways, before we get into it, we've got to thank our members. We have 3 members now on the channel, and there's lots of content there up for you. A big thanks to Tara Jackson, Dorothy Martell, and Eric Merrick for supporting the channel. Remember, you guys can join for as little as $2.99 a month. I do put some stuff up for the $2.99ers, but most of the stuff goes for the other levels. But at the other levels, $5.99 and $7.99, I think it is, a month, you get weekly content, archived interviews that I've never released before on like esoteric topics. You also get access to an archive of e-zines, magazines, video content that I've either designed working with someone else or written and designed myself, or presentations. So there's that. And I often do live streams for everybody on there. We just did one where I talked about how reality TV is MK Ultra, and it really is. We've been MK Ultra long before the internet. We are being MK Ultra all the time. Now, and speaking of something weird, every once in a while I'll get suckered in to TikTok. I don't do X anymore. It's so toxic. It's literally just military propaganda crap. But I was on TikTok, and there's this, you guys aren't going to believe, the cake pop scandal. Cake pop scandal. People arguing about cake pops. Actually, it's more in depth than that. There's this woman on there. She runs a business making cake pops, and she does videos and recipes and all this stuff. And so that's her business. And I guess she had some kind of recipe out there that she's put out there on the videos and in a cookbook. And there was another young girl who did the recipe. She probably tweaked it for her own, and she did a video. She just started. She's young, and she does a little cake pop stand outside her house where people can buy her cake pops for $3 and all that stuff. So she's small, and she kind of copied this Fruity Pebble cake pop recipe, but she kind of altered it a little bit. And I guess this other woman went and started sending threatening messages saying, you better remove that video, you better stop making this, I'm going to sue you for copyright. Really crazy stuff about cake pops. And this young girl was like really shocked. She posted a video about it, and everybody kind of went on the fringe, because indeed I learned today you cannot copyright a recipe. You can copyright your blog, your entire blog post about it. You can copyright a cookbook, but you cannot copyright a recipe. I mean, that'd be ridiculous because if you copyright it, people could just read it. They wouldn't be able to do it. And the the biggest irony is most of the recipes they use box cake mix and fruity pebbles and Reese's pieces. Like it's not like they created the cake mix themselves from like, some secret grandma's recipe that they're hiding. Just really ridiculous stuff. So people are going crazy attacking this lady who threatened this young girl with a lawsuit. And now this young girl went from like 60,000 followers to like almost like 750,000 followers, like really quick. So it's kind of like that Barbara Streisand effect where, even if she did have some kind of a case about recipes, like to start bullying someone and sending them threatening messages, that's not professional. If you had some kind of case, you just get your lawyer to send them a letter saying, hey, can you pull that down? This is violating this and this and this. Thank you very much. You wouldn't start threatening them online and being a bully. Just really crazy stuff. But I henceforth say you cannot copyright a recipe, especially not if you're using somebody else's. Like, how can you copyright Duncan Hines cake mix and Fruity Pebbles? You can't because you don't own them. So, moving on from cake pop scandal, something rather shallow to something a little bit deeper before we get into it. Remember, guys, don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up on the episode, and share. Of course, share. Share the content out. And happy Sunday, by the way, guys. Happy Sunday. Now, like I was saying before I start talking about cake pops, there's a couple approaches to Jesus. And of course, one is literally Jesus is real. He walked on water, he was crucified, he rose from the dead. Jonasai says, I haven't had a cake pop in a long time. Well, you know what? I made cake pops for my son when he was like 5 or 6. I made a few to put in with the cake. And this would have been like 15, 16 years ago. So it's not like cake pops are new things, ladies. Cake pops are not new. Cake pop, and just because you rolled them in cereal doesn't make you a genius. I understand wanting to protect your business, but if you don't want people to do the recipe, you don't put it out there. People who want a secret recipe, guess what they do? They keep it a secret. They don't put the recipe, they don't publish the recipe. You can't because it's useless. I wonder what Jesus would do. I wonder what Jesus would do about the cake pops. I just don't know anymore. But this kind of crazy stuff happens on TikTok all the time. I stayed out of it though. I just watched some interesting videos about legalities and stuff, and I was like, yeah, cake pops. So I don't know. That young girl, what seemed like a curse and she was scared at first, actually turned out to be a blessing for them. All right, so we've got Jonaside, we've got Incognito. Jonaside had cake pops at his wedding. That's kind of cool. We got Dorothy, supporter of the show, friend of the show. I love that when there's podcasts out there and they're talking about some nefarious jerk politician and they'll say, hey, it's Ted Cruz, friend of the show. He's not a friend of the show. Oh my God, it's so funny. So anyways, we got literal translation of Jesus. The Bible is the word. It literally happened the way it is. And if that's the case, some really fucked up shit happened. Then we have kind of two other versions, and they tend to be more biblical scholars rather than religious. It literally happened. You have biblical scholars who are historical. They'll say Jesus was a historical figure. He really existed, but there's probably some myth wrapped up in about his character. And then there are people who are the mystics. Like it's that they're not mystics, that they feel mythologists would would be the proper word. Whereas they're like, no, Jesus didn't exist. This is all just made up mythology. And I'm probably going to be showing you a lot of videos today of the made up mythology. There's a couple of people that I looked at. We're going to be listening to some Jordan Maxwell stuff. Richard Carrier, he's a PhD um, biblical scholar. There is a show with Bart Ehrman. He was on Danny. What's his name? What's his name? Oh, Danny Boy. I can't remember your last name. Danny. My husband knows who he is. Danny Jones. Danny Jones, that's who he is. He was on there. He tends to come at it from no, there's historical proof, but there is a lot of mythology and it's, not accurate. It's incorporated. And I tend to kind of think that Richard Carrier's got some good ideas. We're going to be looking at videos of him. I don't have any Bart Ehrman videos. But then we've got the Jordan Maxwells and the Bill Donahues. They are saying, no, like this guy, this is pure mythology. Jesus is like more of this figure that has been incorporated and used and rebirthed anew, but he represents these mythological figures from the past in different religions. So we'll be going through the Zodiac and how Jesus, the apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, disciple, how they all kind of tie into, and they are literal symbolisms, allegories, things like that represent an actual story of reality of how, the stars move through the sky. Stars don't move through the sky. How our planet revolves on its axis, goes around the sun, how it interacts with all the other celestial bodies. Celestial, get it? Celestial. Pyramid 7 says, can I recommend another creator that I think you would absolutely love? Absolutely, recommend away. Recommend away. So where to start? One of the things since living in America that I have come to notice is American Jesus. American Jesus. And then when you go through all the renditions of Jesus, you realize, well, Jesus, how I talk about Dracula a lot? Jesus is kind of like that. Jesus changes forms. Jesus seems to take on the need of the political powers, the political people in power. And so I think we're going to start off with the scholars and the kind of American Jesus kind of look. And then we'll get into the celestial in the second half. So make sure you keep this baby on and you keep watching and thumbs up. Let's have a look. I'm going to show you a picture before we get into the videos of one of the earliest known depictions of Jesus. Right up here. Okay. That's one of the earliest known depictions of Jesus. And once again, I'm not a theologian. I'm not a biblical scholar, but a lot of early Christians. I don't even know if they would have called themselves that. Maybe they did. Remember, Christ is like anointment, oil. They would have been underground. Rome was trying to get rid of them. And so a lot of these probably were found in different caves. The Christian whistleblower. Ooh, that sounds like a good name. I like that. So this is the earliest version of Jesus that we know that's out there. I'll show you another earlier form. This is later on of Jesus. Probably like, I don't know, 1700 years ago, something like that. So that's Jesus there. Now, in America, where religion still has sway, this is what we get. We get American Jesus. This is Jesus He's got a Roman toga. He got some Jesus got some tattoos and a one sleeve of armor. He's sprouted eagle wings. He's half eagle. He is carrying an AK-47. I think that's what that is. He's got the American flag waving behind him. There's tanks. He's ready to go to battle. He's got airplanes, eagles, and he's gonna mess you up. Some more got Jesus carrying a gun. Like, Jesus is always draped in the American flag. He's very American now. You see, he comes from a cave where they're underground. They're kind of not so. Here we got Jesus. He's like literally decked out. Like, he's ready to go. Trump Jesus. I mean, that's the best one. Everyone's using Jesus for something. Everyone's using Jesus for something. There he is again. And this is kind of more of a Mormon Jesus. You got Washington. Is this Joseph Smith? I don't know. This is this typical. I think they put this for America. It's such America is guided by Jesus. We went from cave Jesus leading his flock of, fighting for rights, pointing out wrongs, very pious, to American Jesus, like very harsh. And this is something you're going to see throughout Christianity. This is in the first time this happened. You see this pious Jesus twist even when Catholicism comes in more power, when they start creating the concept of heaven and hell that never existed according to Jesus. When they start creating these concepts, trying to get you in for baptism, that's another product of Christianity. When the church first started out, Jesus, there was no crucified Jesus even on the cross. It was just a cross with a circle. And I think 680, something like that, 600 ADs, they started putting Christ on there. And you start seeing a more aggressive Jesus. When the political agenda changes, Jesus changes. Jesus starts looking at you sternly in reliefs above cathedral doors, like, hey, you're being judged. Before, he's like, hey, I'm tending my flocks. I'm this, I might even be a rabble rouser against the system too. Literally incorporated for the system. He's watching you really stern. You can see this evolution even in early Christianity. And you can see different versions of Jesus according to what propaganda whatever organization is spewing. I like the Jay and Silent Bob Jesus Buddy Christ. Yeah, someone says the West using Jesus, that's DA, for their ongoing MK Ultra, Montauk Boy psyop, like really crazy stuff. So let's go into American Jesus. It's really bizarre how suddenly Jesus is like Jesus didn't even know guns existed. But I'm not against gun rights either, guys. Not whatsoever. But Jesus didn't know about guns. But now Jesus is an AK-47 toting, American flag waving, tank charging, eagle winged, half eagle creature, angel that's going to destroy all the other nations on behalf of America. And you see this Jesus changing, and that's a sure thing that there's a huge fictitious element of Jesus. And was there? Hell yeah, America. And you know what? I'm not down in America or Americans. I think there's a lot of Americans who would look at this and go, what is this? But this is what they do. This is what the Christian nationalists do with Jesus. And Jesus becomes this kind of something else. The same way, like I've said, Dracula changes through movies through every generation and becomes something for the generation. Jesus, who is much more powerful, I'm not making the comparison, has literally become a power archetype, a program that attaches people to American colonialism, I guess you could say, and the war machine. it's it's really bizarre what kind of things that they do with Jesus, and there's something really interesting when they convert. When I was reading about Christianity, is when they took the cross, which originally had just the circle, which is a key element to what Jesus originally, what he does represent. It's a cross with a circle. They put the crucified Jesus on it because I don't think they had the story for. I think the story gets formed over and over. Whether or not there was a real Jesus, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people who don't think so. The evidence is really sparse. Even like they'll say, "Oh, this person mentioned him. This person mentioned him." There was lots of different Jesus. People were named Jesus, and I don't even think, is Jesus even an Aramaic name? I don't even know at this point, but there's this root of a sun god all throughout all religions. So to think that the Christian Judeo and then Christians would not be influenced by those is kind of insane. But you see that circle transform, they put Christ on it, and that's a PR marketing thing because they want people to. The Roman Empire wants to use Christianity as a cohesion to keep the empire together. But they've got these people who are rallying against what is, their religious order, which would have been Zeus and all these multitudes of God. And so what do? They first have it as like a sun symbol, and then to pull people in because Christianity's getting popular. So instead they can't kill all the Christians because everybody's going Christian. So what they do is they take Jesus, whom maybe they killed him, maybe they didn't, maybe it's made up. There's some people who think Mark just made Jesus up. We'll go through that eventually. But they take it and they put a human on there because that humanizes it, and it's a really good campaign. It's a really good propaganda. So it pulls people in. If there were followers of Jesus that, it continued to follow him over the generations, they're going to be like, oh, he died for our sins. It pulls you in. It's like this adhesion that keeps the empire together. And I think that's the why of it is very good propaganda to adhere people to the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire can just infiltrate Christianity and say, okay, we're kind of falling apart. We've got to revive anew. We have this sacrifice. Jesus has died for your sins. So now let's put him as the emblem. Let's put him as the logo here. And that attaches people to us again. So we can kind of build back better. I don't know what's going on. We're going to take a look. Let's go in this first video here. Jesus as their poster boy. And whether or not they made him up, there could have been a rabble rouser who did some stuff, who were saying he was a king, and that would have been punishable by crucifixion by Rome at the time. And then they just said, okay, he was preaching to people. There could have been many people who preached to people about the horribleness of the Roman Empire. I mean, there could have been a figure like a Charlie Kirk that we see today, that gained so much popularity that they slowly had to infiltrate it. I don't know. We've got the Bible. That's it. We don't have a lot of other records. Not a lot of people mentioning a Jesus. He could have been a totally different name. I don't know. He could have been totally made up, but we will go into some different ideas eventually. But it's clear that they had to infiltrate these groups that were growing bigger and bigger, and they do the same thing. They do the same thing in our country now. If you got a knitting group and it's getting out of control and you're going to take over the government, they're going to infiltrate your knitting group. This is exactly what they did to TPUSA, by the way. Exactly. Well, we'll go into that later. Don't let me forget. I have it written down here. But let's go in here and we're going to kind of look at some videos. This is American Jesus. And then we're going to go into a couple of videos explaining sort of the historical and mythological Jesus. And then we're going to get into what could he really have been. And it's a lot more pagan than Christians are ever going to want to admit. Much more pagan. So let's listen. This is Bill Donahue. He's passed away, but he did a lot of lecturing on Jesus and other mythological things, religious and spiritual processes.
But who is he? I'm going to look at that and say, who is he? I don't even know if you're comfortable with that picture of Jesus. What is he? You know, and what did he show the world that has been twisted from love and caring to religion and politics? Jesus is considered by people in our culture really to be an American. He loves America. You know, God blesses America. And you know, when we do have these wars, which come way too often, we here pray to him. If you'll ever notice, we pray, protect our troops, which insinuates that he should allow the other troops to die. We never say, you know, protect our troops, protect the Iraqi insurgents. We never said protect the Viet Cong. We never said that. See, what happens is we consider that Jesus is much more concerned about the welfare in America than with the welfare of those who are in other countries. And that's the way we look at it. And if you think that I'm exaggerating, let me show you a picture that graphically portrays the American political kidnapping of Jesus. Take a look at this. You see? There he is,
American
Christ,
Jesus,
up on the mountain, wrapped in the American flag. So according to this picture, the rest of the world may just as well pack it in and flush their heads in the toilet because Jesus has wrapped himself in the American flag and it's all over. He's. So now, how can some?
I'm just pausing. Like, it's a power, I guess, to have Jesus unite people like that, and they're using it as a cohesive, the way the Roman Empire did. I guess you could say we're an extension. We're the Roman Empire now. But it's also a danger because it's also a little bit delusion. Like, because Jesus is on our side, we're going to win. I think that's it's a little bit of a delusion, right? Like, to think that Jesus is going to protect you and the other side's going to lose. You'd have to have some power behind that, which United States does have some power behind that. And they got some weapons and stuff, but I don't know if they have the bodies. They didn't do so good on Iran against. Yeah, you said it's a picture. Yeah, but it's not just about the picture. He's showing you the depiction and what Jesus really was. He's going to talk about what I just said. Yeah, it's just a picture, but it's how people think of Jesus. And they think he's real. They think he's really real and he's protecting them. He's going out to protect them.
One, like Jesus portrayed in that, who was the ultimate pacifist.
A pacifist.
Be represented on earth by people who embrace flags and cheer on war. How is that possible? How could that possibly be?
Brainwashing.
Yet that's what has evolved out of all this. But if you read in the scriptures, the portrayal of Jesus, really, if you read it, was one of a strange man hanging around with equally strange people, wandering off into the deserts or in the woods, in the forest, up into the mountains. And he was always trying to do his best to upset religion at every opportunity. At every opportunity. He had nothing but, difficult and stern and almost degrading kinds of words for religious people, the leaders of those days. And all that he was ever able to relate to were the poor and the underprivileged. It is a Jesus that is totally
trying to mute this, but isn't it ironic that Jesus related to the poor and underprivileged, and here we have these massive, rich, wealthy churches, mega churches, people with million-dollar houses, Trump, picturing themselves with Jesus, using Jesus. If there is an original Jesus, as we see him in the Bible, I don't think he would like these people at all. I don't think he would relate to these people at all. I don't know what you think. Leave it in the comments, but Jesus would see these people as the ultimate Caesars, in my opinion.
Unknown in the context of the systems that we live in. Let me show you a picture. What do these two have in common? And the answer is absolutely nothing. In fact, the man on the left probably wouldn't be allowed in the place on the right. And if he did get in, they would probably have the police there, or he would be suspected of being a terrorist. And I could understand that if you look that way. Okay. But we don't want really any part of this suspicious looking.
Nobody ever talks about homeless or terrorists, Jesus. And then they would literally, if Jesus showed up today, they'd probably deport him or throw him in jail or have him arrested. It's a really good point. I'm convinced of that. They'd be like, what? He's not like Mar-a-Lago Jesus? What's going on?
In character, because, you know, it's mortar and fancy glass and candles and incense and all of that stuff. So what basically has occurred is that Christianity has taken the Jesus message of love, compassion, and healing and turned it into a message of salvation. One goes to church to be saved. That's what the whole deal is. You go to church to be saved. One goes to church and sings songs, and somebody plays an organ.
I find it ironic that we're going to church to be saved, because I thought we were already saved by the sacrifice of Jesus. So there's some things that I don't really get about what they're saying. Like, you need to come here to be saved. You need to get baptized to be saved. I'm like, well, I thought we already were. I thought that's what Jesus did. No, but he's the one and only way. You have to come, and you have to come through this church with these rules that we compiled together. Do you see how they took over Jesus's message? You see what they do with it. It's like, no, that's not the end. Jesus was just the beginning. Now you have to keep coming here every week and give us your minds.
And they read books and hymns, and they listen to sermons for one reason and one reason only, so they do not wind up in hell after they die. That's why. Okay. The prime element in the religious approach.
By the way, hell was a made-up construction later in Christianity. It's a manipulation tool to make you come to the church. It's a fear tactic, and they still use it, and it works. I'm pretty sure if Jesus in the Bible was talking about hell, they were actually referring to this life. Like, I think he was referencing like the garbage dump of town. He called it something. It was similar to hell, but it was literally a local garbage dump there. And he's basically saying, look, if you don't get your things right, your life's going to be a dump. Like, it's not going to be good. There you go.
Is not to champion the teachings of Jesus, but rather to champion their obsession that Jesus is the true Son of God, and others, you know, who are written about, such as Krishna and Muhammad and Buddha, they're all phonies and fake gods and so forth. So in other words, the message turns into cult competition. And it rages to the point where it has reached now in our society. And no matter how uncomfortable this picture of Jesus might look, or how uncomfortable it might be to even talk about this and be critical of Christianity or religion or so forth and so on, you are in the midst of experiencing the result of the activities of these people over 2,000 years. People are being killed, people are being blown up, people are being hideously wounded, and properties being destroyed, and it is all over religion.
Boing. All over religion. Now, just one second. We got a whole bunch of stuff to go through, because I wanted to start there with that American Jesus, because it shows you where we are and how Jesus is used to manipulate, to pull people in. And I can talk about Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, the hijacking. And and we're going to say allegedly, here's what I think happened with that. I think Charlie first started that TPUSA company, very small. Candace Owens was part of it and a few other people, and it started to get clout. They appeared everywhere. It started to get traction, and it started to get noticed. And when you start to get noticed, the biggie wiggies and those people with a lot of money who want to control everything take notice of you. And I think he was slowly infiltrated by snakes. Didn't realize it, was very young, didn't have a perception of what really was. They got Erica Kirk in there, and all the other people in TPUSA edged Candace out. She eventually left, and they surrounded him, moved the company to Phoenix, infiltrated every message that he had, and then when he wouldn't continue to go along with it, and they're all actors, even his wife, this is what I believe, pow. And then they usurp Charlie, and they're trying to use Charlie in the same way that Christianity used this Jesus figure to further their empire and cohere people to their political agenda. Like, we're watching stuff like that. We watch stuff like that happen live in our time. What we see the Roman Church and other organizations do all throughout time. This one is epic. We watched it. It wasn't like a crucifixion, but we watched a sacrifice live. And now you see things like this. We got so many videos. You see things, people posting stuff like that. Charlie as a Jesus-like angel in his business suit, America's 250. And there's some correlations here. This is a template on how to do propaganda with Jesus, but the question is why? Obviously to control, to keep an adhesion, to keep people in the dark, and also that there are several different kinds and levels of religion. No, look, right in our comments, Dorothy has mentioned the literacy rate. So no, it's not like people are reading Bibles or reading books. She's saying, 3 to 10% literacy rate at the time. Most of those would be like monks or priests or something like that, or the nobility, stuff like that. And so it's easy to pull people along with emotions and charging symbols with emotions and adhere them, and that's what they're doing even today. So even if they can read, they can be pulled in. It's literally the same process they use to create Coca-Cola and make you buy Coca-Cola. That's what they're doing with religion. That's what they're trying to do with Charlie Kirk. So that they've done with Jesus. And the truth written in the Bible, we have to realize mystics wrote the Bible, not politicians. These people were supposed to be mystics. And the kind of truth behind it is they wrote it in allegory and metaphor. We're going to leave American Jesus behind and Charlie Kirk behind. We're going to get into the allegory and metaphor. Was Jesus real? There's not a lot. Someone said there you have to look at historical evidence. You can't look at the Bible because the Bible's not exactly historical. It's very allegorical. The evidence, there is no archaeological findings. They've found unearthed structures in Nazareth, Jesus' childhood home. So they found evidence of Roman crucifixion. That still doesn't prove Jesus. They found just a few ancient texts that reference Jesus outside the New Testament. Um, the historian Flavius Joseph and the Roman historians Tacitus and Suetonius apparently mentioned him like once or twice. We don't know if that's this Jesus. It was a name that people were named. These writings provide historical comments. They mention Jesus as a real person who lived in the 1st century AD. Okay. So it's sparse. We don't have a lot. There's a lot of churches used to try to say, hey, I have the shard from Jesus's the crucifix that he was. I mean, if we gathered up all those shards that all the churches had, we'd have like 500 crucifixes. There'd be a lot of Jesus getting crucifixed. So there's not a lot of like physical evidence. Where did I read that mystics? Well, all those guys are mystics that are writing the Bible. They're following Jesus. They're mystics. They're a type of mystics. They're visionaries. Oh, I mean, what else would you call someone who receives a message from above? It's a mystic. Okay? These guys are mystics, but they might even be creations themselves. I mean, they think that even Moses is not real. That's the original Old Testament, the Jewish Hebrew Bible, that Moses is fake. Some people question whether King David existed. A lot of people want to do this bloodline that, Jesus is from King David, but there's not a lot running around that substantiates really strongly these people exist. I mean, we call them mystics because some of them are having visions. They're hearing voices. Angels are visiting. It's like, well, I don't know what else you would call that. That's not a scientist. Well, you can disagree, DA. You're inclined to do that. You're inclined to do that. But these aren't scientists. These aren't scholars. These aren't historians. Some of them might be above that, but a lot of them are having visions. Some people even think Jesus was on mushrooms. That's a little far out. I don't think there was tons of drug use there, but there's a lot of people having some crazy visions. We are not dealing with people who are like how we would perceive a scholar and who are looking for solid facts. I mean, they might even be creating something like a Star Wars fiction. I don't know. They might be taking some elements that they know about history and merging it with some earlier god to create their own religion. It's not like religions don't adapt from other religions and don't inherit everything. Even the concept of Satan and Lucifer, right? Even the concept of Satan and Lucifer, that Lucifer isn't Satan, they're two different characters. The concept of Satan and Jesus and facing off is a Zoroastrian. It comes from Iran. That was the earliest concept of that there was this opposing good and bad God. Pyramid 7, I want to try mushrooms like Jesus. I don't know if he did mushrooms. There's some people who have that in there. We might visit it for a few seconds. I'm not going to go strongly with that. There's not a lot of evidence. I mean, there's not a lot of evidence of Jesus physically, so I don't know what kind of evidence there's going to be of him dropping mushrooms. Maybe. I mean, we know Egyptians probably did weird techniques. So the priests would do weird techniques to have these experiences outside of this reality. I just watched this really weird movie yesterday by Ken. Oh, he did that movie, The Devils, but this was a different one. It was called Altered States. It was weird. It was a weird one. Ken Russell. So anyways, when it comes to is he real, there's not a lot. There's not a lot there. So we can, if he was real, we can assume that what we know about him, what's written about him, the whole entire Bible is agreed upon. Could they have left things out? Could these writers have been embellishing? Could they have been lying? Were they writing under pseudonyms? Were they, we don't know. We don't know. Anyways, I can't take all the things. I have to skip on with this. We're going to take a look at this guy here. This is, just so I can remind you, this is Richard Carrier, and he's talking about the origins of Jesus. I think he's more kind of explaining how it could be historical, how it could be mythological. Yeah, it's sparse for Jesus. Okay, I gotta switch. Sorry, guys.
Who died on the cross, because the first
No, sorry, guys. I gotta pop
I
over.
think that's what's going on. So if you ask, like, what is the fiction? We know there's this battle between these two Christian groups, and the only debate really left is to which one is the earlier, right? Who's the new boy, and who's the heretic, and who's like the real Orthodox one. So I think, the mythicist model is that the historicists are the newcomers, and and the mythicists are the ones getting their ass kicked in the propaganda war. And so I think that's what's going on. So if you ask, like, what is the fiction? What is the point of doing this? And Mark actually tells us this. He has a clue in Mark 4 where he has Jesus say, so that his disciples come to him and say, we don't understand what your parables are about. Like, who are these people you're talking about? And he says, okay, look, I do my teachings in parables so that the people I'm teaching won't understand. Because if they understood, then they would turn and be saved. And the only way to be saved is to join us. So for you, because you're an insider, I will tell you the secret truth of the parables. And always it's the parable is like an ostensive historical story. Like, there's this guy who was in a village and did this thing. And he says, no, that didn't happen. It's the message, right? It's the moral of the story is the important thing, not the literal truth of it. Forget the literal story. That's bogus. But what it does is it represents some deeper truth, and that's the real meaning of the parables. And so Mark has Jesus do that. Now, I see this as Mark cluing his audience in that this is my whole gospel. My whole gospel is this. It's a whole parable. You're not supposed to take it literally. If you're taking it literally, you're an outsider, and you're not going to be saved. If you take it allegorically, then you're coming into us. You're joining us and understanding.
So I'm going to pause it there because he defines something really interesting that I have seen in religion as a pattern, is that there's like the general group who thinks everything's literal and they take it literal. And then there is the inner core group who knows that there's another meaning underneath it, that a lot of this is allegorical, that it's metaphor, that it's not to be taken literally, that there's another secret meaning for it. And we will get into the secret meaning for a lot of things, what I think it could be. But it's the same with any religion. There's the religion for the masses, and then there's the secret allegorical meanings and the secret rituals for the inner group. So, and it might just be they have to speak like this because at the time it's not going so good for them. They might want to keep it secret. Maybe they're being hunted down by Romans. I mean, a lot of these people who wrote these books, like, and his disciples were like, didn't come to very nice endings. Could it be a metaphor, an allegory? It could absolutely be. Mark saying, don't take it literal. If you take it literal, you don't get the inner truth. You're not in the inner groove. The people who take it literal, they're just kind of the layman of the church. And you kind of find that in religion. Let's continue.
And so I think that's, and there's a lot of evidence to show that this was going on. And there are various Christians like Origen of the 3rd century who also explicitly talks about this. So we have evidence that this is the thing. It's not just something I'm making up. So it's something we can support with evidence. And yeah, I have a few articles about it. I've got one on the literalism of early Christians. There's a blog article that summarizes a lot of this evidence and talks about it. But also, it's really important. My chapter in Obsolete Paradigm on Docetism goes into this as well.
All right, we're going to do part 2 of that one while we're here.
Ancients could think. Which is that the death and resurrection is real. Like, there really is a Jesus. He's kind of like the anti-Satan. And in the same way that Satan had a war in heaven and he got knocked down and then he like corrupted the lower world, Paul would tell you that was a historical event. It really was real. So there's a historical Satan in his view. But if you asked him like, well, does that mean like does Satan rule a kingdom on earth or something? No. He's in the sky, and he uses his demons to like manipulate earthly kingdoms and stuff. So, but we would say, look at that and say, oh, okay, that's a mythical. Like he believes Satan's real, but he's not an actual historical person on earth in our sense, right? And Jesus is kind of like the answer to Satan. He's the solution to Satan. And you can see this in Philippians 2, where the reverse happens. Instead of Satan wanting to be equal to God and starting a war and getting knocked down, Jesus refuses to see himself as equal to God. And for this, God rewards him. And what Jesus does is he submits. He submits to God's will, allows himself to become incarnate, and gets killed, and then God raises him and then rewards him for being obedient as opposed to Satan. And this whole path undoes Satan's ruin. So like what's the corruption Satan brought about to the world, the submission, sacrifice, and resurrection of Jesus undoes that. And so it fixes the thing that Satan broke, essentially, by doing the opposite of Satan. So Jesus is kind of like the anti-Satan. Now, this does mean that he did become incarnate, did die, was probably actually in Paul's mind buried, and then rose from the dead. It's just somewhere else, not on earth. If it was on earth, it was somewhere like in a mythical place like Eden or something like that, that no humans were there to like watch this. It's the only way you could learn about it was from scripture and Jesus telling you.
All right, we got some people getting upset in the comments. People get really emotional about Jesus, and I think it's important. A lot of people have their emotions, their whole religion, their whole history, their whole identity tied up in someone saying, we're saying that Jesus taught religion. We're not saying Jesus taught religion. We're actually saying how people have adapted Jesus and what he was kind of talking about and adapted that into religion and taken it over. I've said that. I don't know how I could say that more clearly throughout the podcast, that it was that if there was a Jesus character, he was seriously infiltrated, but that character, you guys are really going to get pissed off when we get into the astrology part. There is no Jesus means, why do you believe there's an antichrist? So I talk about the antichrist because people in this culture believe it. They're talking about it. They're saying, hey, but we're gonna people get so upset. I don't necessarily believe there's an antichrist, that an antichrist is going to come. I talk about it, but religious people believe there's an antichrist. People who are tied to the church believe there's an antichrist that's going to come. He wants to be Jesus. He wants to be that character that may or may not exist. And Jesus doesn't have to exist at this point for that to be. It just has to be that people believe it. If you believe this whole narrative and you believe an antichrist is going to come, there you go. It's true to you, and you can fall into a psyop where they make it happen. I think they're going to psyop. It's not logic. I don't believe that an antichrist is going to come. Religious people believe there's an antichrist going to come. Religious people believe that. And I think you're going to get bamboozled. I think you're going to get bamboozled because I think the system, the tech bros, they're going to go, oh, well, they believe in this. We can psyop this shit. We can psyop this shit and get them to do things because we can say, look, it's an antichrist. But you said there is an antichrist. No, you're the religion of Christianity saying there is an antichrist. I'm just talking about it. And I'm telling you, according to this is what it is. And this is what people believe. And I've joked with people and said, well, what if Trump's the antichrist? And the reason I did that is because she was super religious and a fundamentalist and she believed in the antichrist. And so I said, hey, in the biblical text, when they do 666 or they say antichrist, they say they're referring to this. I don't think that an antichrist is going to come, like a literal demon breathing antichrist figure. I think it's all metaphor. It's all repeating a template. It's saying like, oh, it's Nero. It's this bad ruler. This person's going to take over and do this. Is there an actual literal antichrist that's going to take over? I think they're going to use it as a psyop. I think they're going to use it as a psychological operation to pull you into fear, to make you bring out some kind of system that they want, whether it's tying you to, getting digital ID, whatever they're going to do. All right, we will get into it's not literally logic. It's not like I'm being anti-logical. I'm explaining to you what people believe. And I think it's just going to be a psyop. I think people are going to use that belief just like they'll use something. But then why have this topic as discussion? Why not? Why not talk about what the majority of people in your society believe and how it might be wrong? Why not? Good Lord. All right. You've put me off track. Now I have to get back on track to where we're going to go because people get too emotional about this. They don't like you questioning the idea of Jesus, especially if they think Jesus is real. And I question whether he's real because I can see people adapting. I can see people adapting Jesus every which way. He literally becomes like a fictional character. Could there be a real rabble-rouser there that was saying, hey, you Pharisees, you evil people? Yeah, there could be. But that guy, they're not concerned. No empire is concerned with that guy. They're concerned with a mythical figure that can adhere you to them and control your emotions and pull you through anything they want to do. That's what the system's interested in. All right. I have so many videos. Let's check out this one just for fun. Let's check it out.
Because it's not something that happened in some primeval garden. It happens inside of every human being today. It is the serpent inside of you that speaks. It is the serpent, that energy that rises like helicon, the helix, the double helix of DNA that rises up the spine to impact the pineal gland. And it's saying to you, you've got to go up the tree, which is your body, and take of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is your mind. You've got to do that. Because once you then are able to understand these things, then you will be expelled from the garden. Do you know why you're sitting here? You're sitting here because you were expelled from the garden by the God of darkness. You're sitting here because you're no longer welcome by me. Why are you no longer welcome? Because you think. And you're not allowed to think. And that's this whole story. And I really find much credibility. And when I've always wondered, when I've ever read the Bible, and I've tried to say, this is God, and all of the preachers and teachers would tell me, you've got to love God, you've got to have faith. But the whole book I read about, if he wasn't killing kids and women, he's killing animals. He couldn't get enough of having blood sacrifices. He couldn't have enough animals in there to, bleeding all over the place. What the heck is this guy? And then the point was, don't come near my mountain. Anybody that touches my mountain is going to die. This is your heavenly Father. I don't want to, what is this guy? But now, could this possibly be? And could this possibly indeed be? Well, this was written, and you can look his name, it was written by a Persian prophet many, many years ago, who reaches this conclusion of what our life is and what our chances are. And you know yourself, everything that you try and everything that you've attempted to fight against, how do you overcome it? Because as soon as you succeed in putting down one thing that's come against you, there's another one. As soon as you climb one mountain, you get to the top of the mountain, you've overcome, and then what do you look and you see what's ahead of you? Another mountain. And that's all they are, one mountain range after the... And so what this Persian prophet of long ago said, you've got to be exactly the same as the true God. You've got to be passive. You've got to be meditative. You've got to be still. You've got to be quiet. You've got to stay within, because there is nothing else that you can do, because you can't win. You can't possibly fight it. You've got to eat from the tree of life. And many of you, as myself, have for years stood around, and I've listened to these bizarre experiences that people said they've had and what we should do, and found it doesn't work. I've got to find a logical explanation. And so now we go into soaring again up to supernova 1987A, up to the movement of Pluto taking its place as the point of Hades in March 15th, 1999, and looking at the change. Let me tell you something else, and just think about this. What have we talked about here? We've said that we've proved, there's no question about this, that Pegasus is the hippocampus of the brain. The hippocampus of your brain is actually Pegasus. It is in contact with Pegasus, the white horse. And that's where all of the discoveries were made, okay? And what is it talking about? What did we say is going to be the big change that comes upon people in 99 and 92? It is the restoring of your memory. The restoring of your memory as to who you really are. And now what else is the big thing that's going on in industry all over? What is going to happen in what they call Y2K, year 2000, with the computers, is memory.
I'm going to comment on the Y2K thing. Didn't happen. See? More created hysteria, just technology. And someone mentioned the I think it was my husband. He mentioned the Shroud of Turin. And there's some big issues, because originally when they looked at the Shroud of Turin, they said, look, this is like not real. The blood stain suggests that it's fake, and they did DNA tests. Now they're saying that someone did tests on it and said, no, it is real, and they're conjecturing. I'm just going to say one thing about the Shroud of Turin. It's really convenient that the stain on it looks like your stereotypical Bible Jesus that was created PR campaign-wise by the church. When this is your early forms of people who looked at Jesus, it's convenient that it looks like that. So it makes me still skeptical that this isn't the shroud that they wrapped Jesus in, if they did at all, if that stuff happened. If you'd have to believe that a man died on the crucifix and rose, literally, like take it literally, and then he rose. You'd have to believe that's possible. I mean, I guess it is. I guess someone could have a near-death experience and come back, but that's possible, but not likely. We're going to go into a different video here. He's talking about certain Pegasus and stuff that's... I'm not so sure I fall for all of that. We're going to go into some videos here. We're going to go into this one here.
Jesus.
Okay, and that one's really blunt. They're not, so there's another video that I want to talk about here. Some Lucifer stuff. No, there's some more. There's another Jesus video, and I know that we got to talk about it. So about Jesus, no. Well, we're going to get into the high. No, I went through over all of them. So Jesus also, okay, so we're going to get into the idea of the astrology and how some of the earlier writers, whether they're physicians or mystics, or they were having mystical journeys, whether they were trying to tell us something more than just, hey, here's Jesus, he's a real person. Whether they were trying to tell us something about our solar system, something about an inner journey, an inner thing that we have to have. Whereas the control system, like a church or a government, would want to pull us away from ourselves and, aligning inner journey, connecting to this idea of Jesus and the sun. They want to pull us from that, tell us that's bad, that's evil, and usurp the message and turn it into, you must follow us, come to our church, give us your tithes, give us your time and money. So we're going to kind of ease into that. But before we do, we're going to have to take a few minute break. I got to go check on the doggos. Someone just said, Jesus was not the Messiah. He wasn't the Son of God. He was simply a man who preached spirituality, and then the state killed him and used his name for profit. I mean, that's what a lot of people think. I mean, it's to the point. But we're going to go into an area after breaks. I got to go check on the dogs, where we have to remember that there's religions that come before this. There's figures that come before this. And the narrative of Jesus fits other religious figures. So was there a man that, protested the current corruption that was in the land, that was amongst the people and the authoritarianism that they usurped and adapted and put on these mythological figures and covered it up under Christian doctrine. And we're going to look at this idea of some origins of sun gods and stuff like that. We got tons of videos to go in there. So I'm just going to pop off into, we'll probably back in about 5 minutes. I just got to check on the dogs, and I'll see you guys in a second. Don't go away. Thumbs up. I'm going to be back in a few. Alrighty, we are back. The dogs have gone to the bathroom, and we are going to get into sun god worship. And I had a guest on quite a while ago where we talked about this idea of astrological information from the ancients being incorporated into Christianity. And you can see a lot of people will think, some scholars will say that there are elements in Catholicism, particularly with the saints and stuff, that they adapted pagan gods as they spread Christianity around Europe, that they adapted their gods into the oh, Jonaside got a leftover hot dog. That sounds good, actually. Leftover hot dog. Anyways, that the Catholic Church essentially adapted and was fairly passive about it at first. And they, adapted some of the gods of other people into saints, into different figures. And then they got a little more serious where they're like, you got to be converting. We can't be doing any of these pagan things. I suspect it was probably when they got questioned about by the smaller churches. Like, there was a lot of churches that were becoming very, very wealthy, and smaller churches weren't. And smaller churches start saying, "What, y'all? Like, why? Where are you getting all the money?" Because originally Jesus, he kind of wasn't supposed to be about making money, and we know that the church is literally doing this. And my point to point this out, DA, by the way, I love you. I'm glad you come to the show. And I know you have a difference of opinion. But my point is to point out that it's not just what, if everyone has a consensus and everyone believes this type of manipulation, so you'll give a church your money, it doesn't make it okay. And yeah, I should be able to talk about it. And I should be able to say what I want. We have a free country, and I should be able to say that. These books are compiled by churches, organizations. They make a lot of money. They don't pay taxes. They control a lot of people. And so it's important to examine what they believe, if it's real, and if they're corrupt with it, right? I think it's really important to have a look at that, and whether the symbol that they carry around on a cross is the actual man, or is it something else underneath? Do they present that to us as, here's the layman, and there's something else underneath that it's connected to, and it's connected to that because it's connected to Rome, because Rome usurped Jesus Christ? I think it's a really important thing to look at. And if you don't want to look at it and you want to believe that the Bible is the word of God, and that the Bible should never be questioned, even though there's literally 50 rewritten interpretations of it over the year, you're inclined, you can do that. I mean, you can do that. Well, you said it right up here. Don't take what God told mankind that you can read for yourself and say that it's people saying it. The only reason any person knows of the Antichrist is because God told mankind about him coming. But people constructed this book. This stuff is all constructed by human beings. It's all constructed by human beings. And I'm not saying people said Antichrist back then. I'm saying today people use the Antichrist to manipulate. All this stuff is PR propaganda. And when you start looking at how it's organized, you can see how they use it to glue people in, adhere people in. So we're going to move on. I'm not going to take any more comments on this because we have to move on to different topics about this sun god, the origins that might be behind this, that the Romans probably inserted into Christianity. And we're going to start off looking with Jordan Maxwell. Let's check out this video here.
Who died on the cross, because the first 600 years of Christianity, there was no man on a cross in Christianity. Go back into the history books, go back encyclopedias, and you will find that for the first 600 years of Christianity, there was no man on a cross, period. They never understood Christianity to be a man who whose name was Jesus, who died on a cross. That came after certain church councils in Europe decided that they needed to put a man on the cross and make it more personal to humans. And so when you read that, you see that, well, for the first 600 years of Christianity, there was no man on a cross. They didn't even know what you're talking about. So I'm just saying, if you want to do some homework and do some research and academically go back and prove what it is you believe, you will of all the wonderful things that you know are just not true. Period. Sun worship is because the ancient peoples looked at the sun, and to us on the earth, the sun is a perfect, flawless, round circle. And so that's why they understood the sun was, it was an eye in heaven, and the perfectly round eye in heaven is watching you. So God is watching you all the time. Know the circle, like the circle of your eye, is perfectly round. And so therefore, if you are following God's advice, if you're following the teachings about God's Son, then you will be his pupil.
We're going to take another look where he's talking about that early time in Christianity when they hadn't put Jesus on there yet. And he's talking about this circle, and he is talking about, okay, we're going to have to give somebody a timeout because he's a little bit crazy, and if he doesn't come back, he doesn't come back. All right, so we're going to continue because somebody's getting a little hysterical. He's basically spamming the chat, and that's just not acceptable to rant and spam. That's one of the rules here. Trying to be kind, but you can't be kind to please everybody. He's like, anyways, we'll go on with it. So he's talking about this early symbolism in Jesus and Christianity. And he's talking about it in terms of this circle. And what does this represent? And why? And we talked about this at the beginning. I mentioned that why would they put Jesus on there? Why would they put him on the cross? Why would they have a human emblem? It is a very human thing. And a lot of scholars, some scholars, and I think it's pretty accurate that it's to bring in that human aspect of it. So it's not just a circle. It reminds you of the sacrifice that was done by the Roman Empire that usurped him. The irony of everything, and it kind of brings you in. It's like that Catholic guilt. You know, Candace was saying on the Sean Ryan show that Catholics, this is a weird thing, and I disagree with her. Catholics can't be socially engineered, and I'm like, oh yeah, what about Catholic guilt? They most certainly can. So a little blind spot for her, I don't know. But anyways, the whole concept there is like, what does this circle originally represent? And we're going to get into that. I think I've got another video here. Dun, 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 dun. That one is not it. It's Zodiac Jesus. This isn't Jordan Maxwell. It's pretty bland, but we'll go here. Let's just listen to what they say here.
Jesus never existed, and Christians have been worshiping the sun this whole time. Think about it. Jesus has 12 disciples. Those are the 12 zodiac signs. 4 gospels for the 4 seasons. He's called the light of the world and son of God because he is the sun. Christians worship on Sunday, literally Sunday. They eat lamb at Easter because the sun passes through Aries, the ram constellation, bringing life back after winter. When you say amen at the end of prayers, you're invoking Amun-Ra, the Egyptian sun god. The entire Jesus story is ancient astronomy disguised as history. December 25th, that's when the sun stops its southern descent and begins moving north again. The sun is literally reborn. If you want the full book, comment wisdom.
All right, so there you have it. A Roman sun god. You see this god all throughout different religions. You have like Apollo, different sun gods. The son of God. I mean, it's like literally right in your face. It's the son of God. And when he's, I am the way, what ceases to be on the planet if there is no sun? Life. It is the whole crux of life. The Son of God. It's literally right in our face, like nonstop. So we continue on with this. We'll get some more kind of scholarly ideas about this. Is Jesus a sun god? Is there a message in Christianity? Are these writers telling us about solar body energy because they're writing an allegory? They're not writing literally. When the problem is people who like, I read the Book of Giants, I did this, but they're interpreting it literally. He's getting upset because I haven't read all these things. He's, the guy in the audience there. I had to give him a timeout because he's just getting a little unhinged. And maybe he'll never come back. I'll live with it. But there is this idea, it's allegory. So and that the people who wrote the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all those people, they wrote an allegory. And one thing that you understand at the time, we're living in the age of polytheism, Roman Empire. People spoke in allegory and metaphor and symbolism all the time. It's like a sign of high intelligence if you can do that. People who take things literally all the time don't have oral traditions. Remember, these are also people, like Dorothy said, who aren't reading and writing. They see things symbolically. They write things down. They don't write things down. Sorry, I meant to say they don't write things down. They share stories. They talk. They see things in symbols. They tell an actual event as an allegory. You see that in native traditions. They tell an actual event as an allegorical story. So, like, if you see like a native culture will say the raven came and did such and such and tricked this man into doing, they'll have something and it'll include raven and the bear. They don't actually mean the raven and the bear did it. It's an allegory for some kind of real event that happened in life. And so there's a really high possibility that these early scripture writers, who are probably pretty intelligent about this, were using allegory so that they could cover up a different message or speak in a way that people of the time would understand. Whereas we take things so literally, write it down by the bell, and to say that I don't know how people thought at the time, well, I don't necessarily because I wasn't there, but I know they didn't necessarily think in literal terms all the time. They told things in stories and allegory and narrative. So let's look at Jesus as a sun god. Was Jesus a sun god?
Never was intended to. When you say to somebody, let's go shoot the bull, do you intend for them to go out and blow up an animal somewhere? Obviously not. Well, that's what we've done. But who and what is the sun? The sun was called Amen. The sun was called Mithra, Ahura Mazda, Osiris, Zeus, Helios, Sol, Apollo, Christ, all the same. The universal father of all light is the sun. Hare Krishna means Christ the Son. Let me show you something. Here's the name of the sun in Egypt. Amen Ra. The sun god. Now, let's go. Let's do a little Bible running here. And go to page 1004 in those little Bibles that you have. Go to Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3. I just told you that the name of it, this is the Egyptian sun god. Let's put Egypt here. Got that, Joe? Good close up. Nice and clear, right? We have a new cameraman tonight who's one of the best. I was able to go out and spare no expense because of the contributions coming in. We have Uncle Joe on the camera, and this guy comes to us all the way from Lenoka Harbor. I'm kidding, but he's a super friend, and we appreciate him doing this. Here we are out of Egypt, Amen Ra. Let's take a look at Revelation chapter 3. Go to verse 14. Jesus Christ is going to make a statement, and what does Jesus Christ call himself? Revelation chapter 3, verse 14. And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, these things say the Amen. He calls himself by the name of the title of the Egyptian sun god. Now, I mean, you got a Bible. It says Bible on the front of it. It's a King James Bible. And in Revelation chapter 3, verse 14, Jesus Christ calls himself by the name of the Egyptian sun god. Now, look at this here.
All right. I know there's going to be people who say, no, that means something else, and it could, because a lot of biblical scholars will talk to you and they'll say in their lectures that there's a lot missing in context and grammar. And even that fellow that I had, you guys would be better off to go listen to his full interview as Richard Carrier. He talks about grammar and missing context, and that people just do literal translation of everything that's said. So this idea that Jesus is replicating sun gods, the reason I could believe this is because it's being adapted by Rome, who had gods like Apollo. There's these sun gods there, and that it's literally a replica. Like, people would worship the sun because they know that without the sun, all life is gone. Son of God. That is literally primordial in religion. In most religions, there is a form of sun worship, and there's a form of observing the night skies and the zodiac. There's a form of observing the seasons. And why? Because it's important. It's important to know when to plant your crops. It's important to know, when the harvest is going to happen. It's important to know, hey, what's the best time to have children, for the year? Like, how do I put myself in the motion of the movement of the world? And Christianity today is like we're right out of touch with that. We're right out of touch with the movements of the planet. We're kind of acting like we're gods and we're determining the movement of things, but yet the planet still moves on. And so early religions, the sun would have been super important, which is why I found it compelling that people talk about this. And so obviously it's not my theory. I'm not the one who came up with it. I'm just looking at it, but it's compelling because it's literally the crux of all worshiping. Even if you want to go to pagans who did sacrifice, they are doing that so that the sun will come back in the new year and bring them the harvest. They think that if they offer this up to whatever God they believe in, the sun will come back. It's all about sun worship. And so this is sort of a more milked down way for Christianity to honor the sun by literally calling the Son of God. And I think then you come up to whoever in the Council of Nicaea, they're going to, they decided at one point, there was apparently, according to not George Carrier, but that Richard Carrier guy, there was multiple, thoughts about what to do with the Bible. Should we do it metaphor? Should we do it this way? But ultimately, the people who wanted it to be literal won out and said, no, we got to make this literal. We got to make people literally think that these things all happened as historical context. And a lot of it is not necessarily something that happened historical. Like, people will try to say they can find Noah's Ark. I don't think they have yet, but they'll swear that they can. People say that's the Shroud of Turin. It exists. There's an imprint of Jesus on it, but that doesn't mean that it's Jesus, right? So at some point they decided to make it literal, but behind it is this sort of sun god worship. That's this kind of idea I think it's been around for a while. And this sort of unified sun god worship, from polytheism to worshiping the one, was tried earlier in Egyptian time under, what's his name? Help me out, guys. He wanted you to worship Ra, Akhenaten. I think that's what his name was. Was it Akhenaten? Yeah, King Akhenaten. And he was considered blasphemous at this time. Like, they literally carved everything of his existence away and tried to rewrite history after he died. They went back to their old Osiris, kind of, their old dynamics. But this idea of worshiping the sun disk god was there, and it's been there in other religions. And so I find it, is it probable? Yeah, it's probable. Do I know 100% sure? No, I don't know 100% sure, but it's okay to discuss it, that this is sun god worship. Okay, we're going to keep going for the sun god worship. We got some more videos to go to. Let's pop back over here. I keep forgetting to pop back into the screen. Let's look at the sun god. All right, so let's go into figures of astrology. And then we'll talk a solar body energy.
So here we see the four seasons, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, writing a story about their risen Savior. And what do we see them all four writing about? The Son. This is why Jesus had 12 apostles. Jesus represents God's Son, not S-O-N, S-U-N. Jesus is a metaphor in the New Testament for the Son. And he was our risen Savior. Of course, the sun rises each morning. You'll see this famous painting where there are 12 apostles. And to Jesus' right, there's the first apostle to his right is a woman. A lot of people do not know that one of the 12 apostles of Jesus was a woman. Why? Because there is a zodiacal sign called...
So I know people are going to argue about that because people don't like women being represented. But there's a lot of people who are looking at that figure who they're like, yeah, it kind of looks like a woman. So it's a new theory. So we're going to go with it for today. It's okay if you don't believe it. Just saying.
Virgo. Virgo was a virgin. That's why you have to have one woman in there to represent Virgo. The 12 apostles are the 12 signs of the Zodiac. Now let's look at some of the Zodiac symbols used in religious history. And we'll start with Taurus the bull. The age of Taurus was the age of agriculture, when the cows and animals that we were now beginning to use as food, that was just one of the qualities of the age of Taurus. The age of Taurus is between 4400 and 2200 BC. And keep in mind that Taurus the bull was recognized all over the world by all governments and all religions of the world. Everybody knew what it meant, except us today. So this is why you have words like holy cow, and the cow is still holy in India today. We see the Egyptians worshiping the sun between the horns of the bull. The sun is very important to the 12 signs of the Zodiac. Most people do not realize that Taurus, being in the heavens as a constellational sign, was very, very important to Judaism. Here is Taurus, the cow, the bull, and he is in heaven. You see the sun behind him, so the sun is in the age of Taurus, the bull. And of course we have many stories about the Jews worshiping the golden calf. People don't understand what that story is all about. Moses goes up into the mountain to talk with God because it is time for God to change the ordinances of heaven. And it's important here to remember that each sign of the constellation lasts 2,150 years. Every 2,150 years, the world changes completely. All the great religions of the world realize that. And now Moses comes down with a new beginning of a new way to worship God. A new time when God is going to be worshiped in a different way. And so Moses goes up to find out what that new way of worship that God wants people to do. And so we have the story of the golden calf. Golden, well, because the sun is golden. And calf is a bull. So we have the golden calf, or the bull, Taurus, and the sun in the age of Taurus. Today, Israel is trying to bring back the good old days of bull worship. But it's impossible because Taurus is gone. We're in the age of Pisces. And they want to go back to the old days. The way we worship God in the old days was the golden calf. We're in Pisces, and we're at the end of Pisces. That's why the Christians talk about the end times we're living in, the last days we're living in.
Really a good transitionary for why people get upset. I'm trying to get to the other screen and it's not going, because they talk about end times. They talk about end times. We've actually gone over the show. We've talked about the age of Aquarius merging in right now. So they said Taurus, the bull. You had Aries, the age of Aries. Then you had Pisces, which we're in now, and that's transforming into Aquarius. So I don't want to be a naysayer or trash Christians, but it seems like there's a transition way beyond our control that's universal. You know, that Christianity, the religion, that they're going to transform into something else. Because why? Because I say, no, you can't study the Bible? No, not because of that, but because of them literally written in the stars above. Like the constellations are moving and there's influence, and you've got BB and all those people. I don't want to get in depth there. That's not the point of this show. They're trying to revisit Taurus, bull worship. And as Jordan Maxwell says, well, it doesn't work because we're in the age of Pisces, and the age of Pisces is actually now going into Aquarius. So yeah, that's why shit's hitting the fan and things are looking crazy right now, because you got these two old energies trying to bring back something, and that's merging out into something new, the water bearer. And it's why I think they're going to use Christianity or some form to pull you in, maybe even to a new religion in some Aquarius control system, or do you break out of it? I'm not sure. Something we'll have to visit on a different show. But we do have a video going on about Aquarius and Jesus and all that stuff. Does Jesus transform again? You know, does he transform into something else, into some other thing? I mean, you hear these tech bros talking about Jesus. Now Elon Musk talks about Jesus, even though he was never religious before. And you hear them talking about lecturing on Antichrist, and that's why I think it's going to be a psyop, that you should never trust them. But there's totally an energy shift happening right now. That's why people are getting really bizarre about things. But if you're in Pisces, you're over here in Pisces, like, I don't know, from 600-700 years ago, and we're now over here going into Aquarius. Yeah, you're going to be triggered. You're going to get upset when someone's like, well, is that really? Did that really happen? Is it an oral tradition? Is it a narrative? Is it a way to explain something that was physically happening in the world? That's all I'm saying. But if someone takes something literally, they find that offensive, because you're literally pulling the rug, literally, from under their feet, saying, well, maybe they didn't really mean that this guy tried to sacrifice his son and God came and stopped him. Maybe there's some other meaning to that. But people who like some rigid, religious word of God, that they're not comfortable with that at all. And, here's what I say. If you've read all those books, you've done all those things, I encourage you to start a YouTube channel and talk about that. They're all over. They're pushing Christian channels all over the place who take the Bible literally. It's everywhere. Most Christian pastors, they all think it's literal. I don't think it's literal at all, because I know in that time they spoke in allegory and metaphor, and they would have had a more oral tradition. You would have been able to go and tell these things to other people in story form, because most people didn't read. They didn't read at all. They would have talked, spread the news by mouth, or they would have been able to see some kind of statue or a story in a relief, stuff like that. So saying I don't know anything about the time, okay, fair enough. You want to believe that? And you want to spam the chat, you get banned. All right, let's go look at the age of Aquarius, because we're going to move on to this guy, and he talks about the Bible talking about the age of Aquarius, signifying something that happens. Now, you might not agree with him. He could be going a little far. I agree. Like, sometimes they go a little far with their interpretations. I'm like, no, maybe not. But it's interesting to look at, nevertheless, that do they mention this age right now? Do they mention the age of Aquarius coming in, and what will happen? Let's check it out right here.
we get an idea. When you see the man carrying, that's the man carrying the pitcher of water. Okay. Now that's Aquarius. Don't think Jesus didn't know what he's talking about. He sure did. He's talking about this age right now. So that's now. Okay. When you see the man carrying the pitcher of water, this is Luke 22:10.
And remember, if you take the Bible literally, then you think a man's carrying a pitcher of water. If you realize or you see that it's allegory or metaphor, then this makes sense what he's saying here, just as an added note.
He says, enter into the house, and the house is you. Enter into yourself. Go to the upper room, and the upper room is your higher consciousness. And he said, there you will be fed by him. That's where you'll have the Passover, in the upper room. And so now we understand, as we realize the movement of these tremendous universal things that God has created, that Jesus was talking about the man with the pitcher of water, which is the Christ, pouring out. Don't you remember it says? What's it say in the Bible? I will pour out my Spirit upon you. What I'm trying to get through to you is that God has created in the universe a blueprint of life, a blueprint of the movement of the universe, a blueprint of what life is all about and how to overcome that which is the evil and that which is oppressive and rise up to that which is heavenly. What's going to happen is that, according to the Institute in France, in the year 2010, this Aquarian age is going to peak. The year 2010. And basically what the age of Aquarius is the constellation of the planet Uranus. Uranus. That is called the Son of Heaven or the God of Heaven. Now just think. The Christ is supposed to return, split the eastern sky, and cast down Satan into prison. Isn't it interesting that Uranus gave birth to Saturn, and Saturn overthrew Uranus and then was cast out of heaven by the son of Uranus? Do you understand what I'm saying? This is the mythology of the constellations, the stars in the sky. Uranus had a relationship with Gaia, Gaea, which is Mother Earth. So Uranus had an intercoursal relationship and had sons and daughters with Mother Earth. This is mythology of the planets. He gave birth to Saturn. Saturn overthrew Uranus, and I'll tell you more about that. And then Saturn was driven out of heaven and cast down by the sons of Uranus, or the sons of God. Now, understand what we're talking about here. The age of Aquarius peaking at 2010, 19 years from now, would be the Son of Heaven, or the God of Heaven, Uranus, which is moving in its patterns right now as we're talking, moving into the eastern sky, overwhelming that which is the negative influences of Saturn and setting people free. Look up, your redemption draweth nigh. Because all of these things have influences. They influence people. There's no way you can say they don't. They do. They influence people. There's a vibration. There's frequencies that come out of these things, and they have their influences, and the Bible talks about it. I mean, in Job 38:30 of the Bible, it says, can you bring forth Mazzaroth? Can you bind the sweet influences of Pleiades? Look at it, Job 38. Job 38:32. Job 38:31. Can you bind the sweet influences of Pleiades? Well, if the planets didn't have any influence on you.
All right. There we go. I want to take this comment, actually. It's really interesting. It's by Genocide, and I missed it earlier. Genocide, I got you going here. Have you heard the theory that Christianity is just Norse paganism after Ragnarok? Ballard is God, Frey, a fertility god, is Jesus, and Loki is Satan. I haven't heard it, but it doesn't surprise me that there's common themes in all religions, that they share common features. Because there's only so many stories to go around. There's only so many narratives. And what do I say about archetypes? Archetypes are programs. These are programs. They're like, they found this, they found that. This is written here, but it's still written by man. And it could be that these earlier texts, whether it's paganism, Norse paganism, or early Christians or the Romans, they are trying to pull doctrine in from how they feel that God, whatever creative source it is communicating with them that how the world works. And a lot of it is metaphor. I had a guy on here a couple of years ago when I was Gen X News, and he was literally saying that the Bible is also giving people literal farming advice of when to plant their crops. You know, that it's not, they're not literally saying that, but they're telling you when certain, you know, the bull is in this phase, or you're doing this, do this. Like he's saying it's there. Is it? I mean, it might be, but there's only so many stories that go around. Masons believe Jesus is Lucifer, the morning star. Well, here's the problem with all this stuff, Luciferianism. When they were talking about the morning star, they were referring to the planet Venus. The morning star is the planet Venus, and apparently somewhere in the text, someone declares that Jesus. I think I have a video where someone says that Jesus says he is Lucifer. That Satan is a different character altogether than Lucifer, and they're hardly mentioned. It's not like they talk about them all throughout the Bible. But when people, it's a mistranslation that happens, and people are like, "Oh my God, Lucifer is the devil." Someone mistranslated it as Satan. And that, like I said earlier, that Satan figure, it goes all the way back to Zoroastrianism, where they created this, which is Iran, ironically, where they created these two good and bad kind of figures. I'm being very general here because I don't have that information like right in front of me. But the whole idea of the morning star is they figure a mistranslation, and this isn't the UN. There's a lot of Bible scholars who think, look, there's some mistranslation here. When people in pagan times were talking about the morning star, they were talking about the planet Venus. So it could just be observing that. You take it as you will. You're allowed to decide what you want. Okay, so, but I think the biggest point that I could make about what I'm saying is it's not literal. There's a lot of things that are not literal in this Bible, and if you take it literal, you're going to miss the real message that they're saying about the universe, about how things are shifting and how things are moving. I mean, the planet moving around. I mean, we know this stuff all exists. You get people who are like, no, they don't. They're flat. It's all a lie. Like, you get flat earthers who are saying that they believe the medieval Christian version that it's flat, even though they can look with their eyes and observe that the moon is round, the sun is round, the other planets are round if they have a telescope, but we're flat. And so it gets to a psychosis where it's like, no, they're round and they're orbiting. They are orbiting. And so a lot of them, if look, ancient pagans knew this, how come we don't? Like, how come we're taking everything literal, almost drawing things like a 5-year-old? And that's when I see everybody, it's like if I say some kind of saying, what's a good saying? What's a good saying? If I'm like, I want to pop your block off or something, and my kid's like, what block and pop? What? They think I'm literally, I'm going to take a block, when I'm being kind of jokingly like pop, I'm saying something different. It's like not understanding the context. And I think that's a lot of what's happening, especially with the mega churches. I mean, they take everything literally. And to the point where people can add stuff to the Bible all along. People can just manipulate the Bible. We've got how many versions? And I'm supposed to believe that's the word of God, even though it was cropped, edited. Side notes, we've got a Bible that was infiltrated by the Rothschilds in form of, what's that called again? The Schofield Bible. I'm supposed to believe that all these versions are the word of God. It sounds to me like it's handwritten and edited, right? And that the original writers, what's left of it, there's still remnants of this sort of metaphorical allegory story about the creation of the world and good and bad, and the sun being the center of everything, that it's still there. But I'm supposed to believe it's solely the word of God, even though we keep hacking it and editing. This is the problems that I have with people who kind of get upset. And it's the whole idea of what's the true? Is Jesus the cover for a sun god? Did they kind of mash it all together into one? From this concept of this, this rabble rouser that existed, he's really popular, so let's use that. Let's use it. Okay, we've got that one. Did we go through this one? Oh, we didn't go through solar body energy. Now, this is talking about as above, so within, this idea that solar god, Jesus, is kind of a component within yourself, within the body. Let's look at this. Just hold on. I got to get it down.
All life, all the life of the world comes from the sun. But there's a sun in the human body as well. And it is the solar energy of the body, and it's located right in your abdomen, and it is called the solar plexus, the place of the sun. Its contraction and expansion accompanies the life streams that roar throughout your body. And your body operates exactly the same way as the universe does. And it's filled, if you could get it under a microscope, it's filled with little colonies and little atoms and little planets and all kinds of different things inside of you. And the primitive faiths of thousands of years ago justly considered the sun and its fiery life as a symbol of the universal presence of what we call God. Because the sun, without the sun there can be no life. And with the sun there is all life. And as you know, the story of Jesus Christ is copied from the movement of the sun. Obviously, the sun could not have copied from the life of Jesus Christ because the sun is from infinity. But when they wanted to have a crucifixion, the sun goes through the Southern Cross on December the 21st. When they wanted to know how many days and nights should be in the tomb, it's 3 days and 3 nights because that's the winter solstice of December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And when shall we have the birth of God's only Son? December the 25th, because that's when the sun is literally born by the trajectory of the earth. And then when shall we have new life and resurrection? We'll have it on the spring equinox in April, because that's when the sun consumes the ram and sits at the right hand of power in the northern hemisphere. So everything is copied off of this. Your religion, your Christian religion, is copied word from ancient religion. And I know it's hard to take, especially when it comes from me, it's hard to take. But by all means, I would be glad to go as soon as they open this new Forked River library and sit down and show anybody who would like to look. It's copied word. Your God and your saints and all of your Bible statements are copied word from the writings of Zoroaster, Ahura Mazda. The nativity of Jesus Christ is copied word for word of the nativity of Hare Krishna. The virgin birth, the wicked king, the star, the shepherds, the whole thing. It was written 7,000 years before Jesus, and it was talking about Hare Krishna. But nobody knows it. And they come into these churches and they get on television as if this is the first time it happened. It's not. There's always been these stories. And the stories were focused around the sun. God's only son. There is only one sun in the solar system. That is God's only begotten Son, the light of the world. And without it, nothing can live. And it goes through the cross. It goes into the tomb. It is born on December the 25th. It consumes in the fiery consummation of Aries the burnt offering. It sits at the right hand of power, and spring and summer come. That's the Son of God. And that's where the story's copied from. See?
All right. Really important point. Here's what I think happens. I don't think they're still going on about the morning star. I think the morning star, Lucifer, is referring to a planet. I think it's misinterpreted. And then you get all these theosophical nuts who are like, it's Lucifer and we're going to worship him. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't think Jesus, I think it's just the planet Venus. I think they're just getting it mixed because that's how the ancients saw it. Anyways, it's the point. You notice how Jesus is born on the 25th. He gets crucified. I'm not laughing at this. He's crucified, then he rises again in the spring. There's a lot of things about the narrative that follows, literally the seasons and how things happen on earth. It's just there, and it's in so many stories from ancient religions. And Bill Donahue just sort of exemplified that. And being that this Christian religion was started by the Romans, is infiltrated, I don't see any reason why not to believe that they wouldn't have put in that kind of concept into Christianity and covered it as something else. It's standard propaganda. It's standard. I don't care if you go to a Catholic church and you want to worship and you want to, in my opinion, any church today, you're going to probably find it subverted and used as propaganda and indoctrinated anyways. Whether it's Catholicism, a mega church, Judaism, it's all going to serve the world, the physical world. I don't think they're going to encourage you to do anything spiritual. And if you do have some kind of inner sense, they're going to like, that's a demon. And that's what I hear all the time. Oh, don't do that. Those are demons. Demons are coming to get you. Don't listen to that intuitive voice that's warning you. That's a demon, And so I would be very wary, especially of religious organizations. Does that mean that there wasn't a guy named Jesus? I don't know. There's not tons of information. There's not tons of physical evidence. There's a few written context about him. But perhaps it is the whole program where they take people who were very popular, maybe a rabble-rouser. Oh, the lights went out, guys. Sorry about that. Here, I have to turn that back on. The lights went out. There is a rabble-rouser named Jesus. And he caused some issues, but he was super popular. And after his death, his message went on. And so they had to infiltrate that and then incorporate that into their own religious stuff and all the religious stuff that came behind it. And I find it impossible to believe that Jesus wouldn't have, Judaism itself wouldn't have been influenced by the other religions. Like, they spoke Aramaic, and a lot of the Hebrew languages came from older languages, Phoenician. It's not like they just popped out of nowhere. No one's just popping out of nowhere. They're all coming forth and being influenced. You can see that happening today in religion, how everything's globally influenced, and it happened then. I don't think it would be a far cry that even a man named Jesus believed in a kind of, that the sun was the center of everything. And it was, the life. Jesus also preached that, God was within us, kind of in a way that we were all a part of it. I don't believe he ever said, hey, go to that church and give all your money to them. I'm sure he would have been fighting for the rights of the lesser, if we're to believe him in that context. He wouldn't be sitting there like, hey, I just don't think the Mormon church has enough money. I just don't think that that mega church has enough fireworks. Go give them some more of your time and your energy. And to take the literal translation of the Bible and apply it to life. There's so much crazy stuff. I'm not even going to get into stuff. You'd have to believe that someone can be born from a virgin if you take everything literally. You'd have to believe that's possible. I personally don't believe that you can, as a human being, be born of a virgin. But then, it's divine, he's godly. But Jesus doesn't start out as godly. He starts out as, shepherding people. He starts out in this pious way. And you only see these transitions in Jesus' character over like a 600-year period as the Catholic Church kind of hone everything into a stronger narrative that coheres people, where suddenly he's divine, he's of God, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that whole Trinity, and then you've got this virgin birth that comes out really strong. Then you have this idea suddenly that you can go to hell. Then original sin comes, and nobody had these concepts before. I mean, imagine thinking that you're born in original sin. And this idea of sin, that repentant. I just think it's a bunch of manipulative PR hogwash to control people in what they do and keep them coming back for more penance from your priests. And if we know anything at all, these churches are usually filled with the biggest sinners of all. Now, let's pop over here. I might have a couple.
Jesus.
Some people do think the Christians are worshiping the sun. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to believe that at all. Oh, this actually, I do. Let's check out this video here. Zodiac Jesus. A little more Zodiac Jesus.
Now, probably the most obvious of all the astrological symbolism around Jesus regards the 12 disciples. They are simply the 12 constellations of the Zodiac, which Jesus, being the sun, travels about with. In fact, the number 12 is replete throughout the Bible. Coming back to the cross of the Zodiac, the figurative life of the sun, this was not just an artistic expression or tool to track the sun's movement. It was also a pagan spiritual symbol, the shorthand of which looked like this. This is not a symbol of Christianity.
All right, I've got some questions here by Muhammad Ayaz V9E. He says, Venus, the Hindu word Devi of love, further education from one plus source is a she. He said, a friend raised a question yesterday, where does the sun get its fuel from in order to be lit, burning for millions of years? To date and ahead, as he was talking, came to mind. Well, there's some people out there that believe it's like neurons, giant in a giant brain. It's a good question. Like, how does the sun just come to be? Some people believe that it's the opposite, like a big bang. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. There's some theories about how the sun is formed. Actually, maybe I should look that up. Let's see. The literal translation. Let's see what AI says. They could be wrong. Question AI, guys. The sun was formed about 4.6 to 4.7 billion years ago from a giant cloud of gas and dust called a solar nebula. This nebula was hydrogen and helium, so it's chemical, with traces of heavier elements. Gravity caused the cloud to collapse, spinning faster as it contracted. Most of the material gathered at the center, forming a dense hot core, the protosun, while the remaining material flattened into rotating disks. The disk eventually coalesced into planets, moons, asteroids, and comets of our solar system. So that's their official. The sun, our sun, is called a yellow dwarf, and it's in its main sequence phase, meaning it's currently fusing hydrogen into helium in its core. The process is called nuclear fusion, and it happens under extreme conditions. Pressure immense from the weight of the sun's own material. So it's nuclear fusion. That's how they're going to explain it. So you got that one. We got another video here for you guys. That's just the physicist version of it. It's all a chemical reaction and gravity and such like that. Now, a lot of people think that the universe is conscious, that the sun is alive, that it's a live figure, that it has consciousness. There's ideas like that out there. This video here actually talks about the Lucifer stuff. You may be offended. You may not like what Jordan says, but we'll do that. And then we've got another one about the Old Testament.
The devil is not Lucifer. In the Bible, he's called Satan. There's a big difference between the two words. One is Lucifer, one is Satan. Lucifer is Jesus. Jesus in the Bible is called Lucifer. The very last book is Revelation, is the last book. The very last chapter is Revelation 22:16, where Jesus said, I, Jesus, I am saying it. I am Lucifer. So today, if you want to talk about, oh, the devil is going to get you as Lucifer. No, Lucifer is Jesus, arrowhead. Go back and read the Bible. Read it.
The very last thing, folks, in the Bible. Check it out. In
It's
Revelation.
in the book of Revelation,
Yep.
22:16, where Jesus said, I, Jesus, I am proclaiming, I am Lucifer.
Whoa. Okay. You guys can fact check that and tell me if that's true. That's what Jordan Maxwell's saying. But like I said, Lucifer was about morning star, Venus, so I don't know why he would say that, but let me know if that's true. Put the quote in the comments if you want, and we're gonna have another look at this video because we got to get going. I've been on here for a little bit too long. My voice is going, but we've got one more video to show you guys, and I might end out on a funny, happy way. I think we're gonna go back to American Jesus when we end it. I think we have to revisit American Jesus because it's an interesting Jesus, I'll have to say. Let's check
in the
this one
Old
out.
Testament. Well, what about? And there you'll see mushrooms in the middle. And here's Jesus on one side, and there's some of his followers on mushrooms. Here's God giving mushrooms. Well, that was in the ancient Old Testament times.
Oh, this is psychedelic Jesus. There's a lot of people who say this is bunk, that there wasn't drugs in the Bible, but there's some people who say no. I don't know if they're trying to allude to the idea that, they got their visions, they got their ideas because they were kind of like, I don't know, doing psychedelics. And so they had this experience outside this world. Yeah, but there's a lot of people who don't like this, but we'll just listen to it anyways.
So all of this mushroom use was in the Old Testament. Well, what about today, modern day? Let's look at the Christian church today. There are books like The Holy Mushroom, Evidence of Mushrooms in Judeo-Christianity. John Allegro, one of the three top men in the deciphering of the Dead Sea Scrolls, John Allegro, wrote a book called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross was a study of the nature and origins of Christianity within the fertility cults of the ancient Near East. Fertility cults? Yep. Fertility cults. And here's some beautiful Middle Ages paintings of Jesus, and here you'll see Jesus presiding over mushrooms. Giving his followers.
What I would ask is there some kind of symbology of mushrooms? And I'm going to type that up right now. If there's some symbology there. Yeah, it doesn't really say. They say it's not mentioned, but he's saying there's mushrooms in the Bible. Are people doing psychedelics? Is this just an elaborate theory? I don't know. But if someone say they did mushrooms or something that's akin to DMT, it would explain some voices of God or having an experience with some kind of ethereal being or some kind of other form of consciousness, some kind of altered state, right?
His followers, mushrooms. And it says in Matthew 26:26 in the Bible, it says, while they were eating, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it and gave it to the disciples, saying, take and eat, this is my body. Interesting that the word body, take and eat, this is my body, Jesus said.
All right. That's actually a common thing you're taking of eating of Christ. And I mean, if Christ is Son, then I guess the Son growing things, you're eating of the body of the Son. I mean, that would make sense, right? It would make more sense than you're actually eating literally Jesus's body. That's actually what I find kind of creepy. And so that's kind of it. This idea of Jesus as a sun god, of the Zodiac being represented in there. You can go, what I think his name is Mika Danks. He actually talks about this. You go look him up on the internet. He talks at length about farming advices, all sorts of practical things that are actually in the Bible that are instructing people on how to live. And he talks about the zodiac at much more length than I can ever talk about here, and these different concepts. But the idea of Jesus as a metaphor, of Jesus as an allegory, as Jesus as these other gods, of sun gods, I don't think it's new. And I don't think it's that outlandish to think that former gods would be incorporated into this new version of Jesus. Because, I mean, let's be honest, people worshiping him as kind of a god. You've got Rome, who had Zeus. That's replaced by God. Then you have Jesus. That's like Apollo. Then you've got all these other figures that kind of take over for what would have been a pantheon of Roman gods. It's just, it seems very much like that's what the Christian church decided on. So when they say like they dug up these texts, but the Christian church decided, no, those are not the texts we're going with. The Bible we have now is, I guess, kind of it. And I guess it depends which one you have, or what it says, or what it's telling you, and what it's directing you to do. And of course, we went over how Jesus changes. We went over how the original Jesus is right here, earliest depiction of people talking about Jesus, and how now we have Trump Jesus and fuck yeah America Jesus. Very different from this origins of Jesus. So the fact that Jesus is changing tells you it's mythology, and we incorporate what we want into this character. It also tells you that the powers that be, the people who are in control, use Jesus to incorporate their political agendas, their colonialistic agendas. And I think it's clear that whoever this figure was, whether he was real, a rabble rouser, didn't exist, that somehow he's been infiltrated and manipulated to adhere people to this religion of Christianity that is an extension of Rome. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. And so you don't have to believe he was a sun god worshiper. You certainly don't have to believe anything I'm telling you. But people get really emotional. People are emotionally attached. That's how I had to give that person a timeout. He will probably never return. He was just spamming emotional stuff and really upset. I've read this, I've read that. And if you're emotional about it, I encourage you to start your channel and talk about whatever it is you think it is. I just don't buy it because I see too much propaganda in all of religion throughout most of time. And I would guess that the origins of religion is basically trying to explain our place in the universe and this story of good and evil, and how the planets are revolving, and how we have to get along within this world and what to do about it. And it's literally all one fell swoop thing. People see everything as separate, but it's all one fell swoop moment, one circle through the cycle. And now that we're going into Aquarius, who knows what's going to happen? Things could get crazy. Things could get really crazy. And maybe this is why the Christians are freaking out about the end of times, because Pisces is coming to an end and Aquarius is ushering in. But I said to you guys, I wanted to end. I might get a copyright for this. No, I know I will. Just one second, please. I know I will, but for the live people, let's go back to Jesus.
In the Old Testament. Well, what about...
Sorry. Let's go back to American Jesus, because there's one thing that I always like is I like South Park's Jesus. South Park Jesus is good, and they recently did one version of Jesus, and it was good. It was good. So we're going to kind of look at how people see Jesus today. And what could Jesus represent to America today? South Park, American Jesus, here we come. Right. So that's South Park. Basically, Jesus in a lawsuit being sued by Trump. And the news is saying words of wisdom, but he's literally like, Ixley, just eat the bread. Shut up. I'm in a lawsuit. I can't say anything. I can't even preach. I can't even tell you the words of wisdom. I can't even tell you that you're all from the divine source of God and that the Son is amazing. I can't say anything because I got a lawsuit from Paramount. Very funny stuff. I love it. Always love South Park, and they've got some ingenious stuff. And we're having a guest on the show on the 19th. We've got Dr. Dean Bertram coming on, guys. So you'll want to get up for that. Him and his partner Sam are coming on to talk about their latest project. He runs a film festival and he does a lot of research on UFOs. So you guys might like that one. 5 p.m. on the 19th. And I don't know, I'll decide what next week's topic is. If you got an idea, put it off in the chats. But until next time, remember, so what did someone 666? Hey, guess that. Guess what? We did a show on that, and apparently some of these priests and stuff, some of these priests think that 666 back in the day represented the king or the political power. I'm willing to go with it. Muhammad, just before we go, he says, interesting subject. I personally have no issues whatsoever. In fact, studying on the subject. Yeah. Well, don't take my word as gospel, because I'm certainly not the gospel. I'm certain just exploring this idea because I see these themes of Jesus becoming, whatever anybody wants Jesus to be. And excuse me. And that includes in the original Bible, written by man. So I don't think you should just blindly go into believing that you're born of original sin and that you're a horrible person and that Jesus is repping you and everybody else who doesn't believe in Jesus is evil and they're going to hell. Like all these concepts that we have out of Christianity are just, I don't think they're good. I don't find them very good or productive at all. And I find them that they're fueling the craziest stuff right now. And I think that it's clearly this is where it ends. Like this is where you end up in this evolution of Christianity. And does the age of Aquarius, does it signify in this is just the sort of end of days dying energy? I don't know. You can check out our show we did on the age of Aquarius. It's under the live stream list. So you can see what I say about that there. But things are definitely changing, and all this kick up and people getting upset about it, about shit written in a book thousands of years ago, I just find it funny. And tell me that I can't say this or I can't. I can come on this fucking podcast and say what I want, honestly. And you can start a channel and say what you want, at least for now. So Cheerios, guys. The 19th, we have a guest. Next Sunday, be here 5 p.m. And I'll try to get a stream out during the week. A big thank you to all of my subscribers on the Clusterfuck. Remember, you can support me by subscribing to the channel, clicking that thumbs up right away, saving to a playlist, and visiting theclusterfuck.com, where you can get all our other links to social media and Substack.